Are you wanting to buy a house but don't know which ones are good and which ones you should avoid? Well, over my nearly decade career, I've helped people buy and sell everything from single family homes to townhomes, and I've helped them avoid things that ended up turning into a money pit. And let me tell you, there are so many things that I've learned along the way. So today, I'm going to show you exactly why you need to stay away from certain homes. Welcome to Real Estate Talk, where we talk about all things personal real estate and investing. And today, I'm going to walk you through several types of houses that you absolutely have to stay away from. So let's start with the first type of house being old houses. Look, there are so many things that could go wrong in old houses, and I'm not talking about a house that's maybe 20 or 30 years old. I'm talking about a house that's, 70, 80, 100 years old. These homes come with so many different problems if they haven't been updated. There's going to be things like lead paint, asbestos, potentially bad electrical, bad plumbing, all sorts of things that could go wrong. And let me tell you, not one of these things is a quick, easy, and cheap fix, especially if you want it done the right way. Things like electrical and plumbing could easily cost you 20, 30, $40,000 depending on where you live and how big your house is. I walked through several houses with several clients and immediately knew, okay, there's a plumbing issue here, and this is not going to be a cheap fix. And this is not even an old house, but you need to stay away from it. So in houses that are really, really old with plumbing, for example, there could be lead pipes that could be rusted. Electrical could be completely out of date and using old standards and old code. And if these things aren't brought up to standard, you could have fires, you could have plumbing issues. There could be so many things that could go wrong. So unless you can get an old house for extremely cheap, almost next to nothing, it is completely worth staying away from. And not to mention, even if you do get it super cheap, you're going to spend so much time renovating this house, it's probably not going to be worth it. So number two, near and dear to my heart, I can't stand these types of houses: condos. Now, look, I'm sure there are very specific conditions where condos, yes, they could do good, but overall, these are not a good home for you to buy, especially if we're talking about a home that you're going to occupy. So where do I begin with the problems? You have HOA that could be very expensive. Insurance could be a nightmare and very expensive. And the resale is really, really tough, especially when lenders have a certain requirement of how many owner occupied units can be in a certain condo area. Now, yes, HOAs can be good, especially if you have like a house, they can be useful. But overall, when it comes to a condo, it just doesn't make sense. The HOA is going to have to constantly go up. It usually goes up a lot higher and a lot faster than in a regular single family home subdivision. The insurance is the same thing. It goes up really, really expensive. And if you live in a state like Louisiana, like I do, some carriers will just completely drop you because they don't feel like dealing with all the hazards and flooding and hurricanes we have. So you're going to be left with extremely high insurance premium. You're going to be left with high HOA costs. And if your rent doesn't keep up with it, well, you'll be out of luck. Now, I know in some areas, like super high density areas, maybe like New York or, other places around the world like Hong Kong, that's super dense. Yes, it can be good. And it also can be good if you buy a vacation home along a beach area, Florida, Alabama, maybe even California along the beach. That can be good because you can get super high rents through things like Airbnb. I get that. But those are very specific, very rare conditions. The average person is never going to live there. Number three, flipped houses. No. Hear me out, because yes, I do this for a living, but let me explain. When I say flipped homes, I mean bad flipped homes. Yes, there are some good flippers out there who know what they're doing, who hire good trades, who do everything by the book, who don't try to cheap out. If they can't repair something, they don't repair it and they just disclose it. There are good ones, but there's a lot of bad ones out there, and you need to know what to look out for. Bad flippers are really easy to spot, especially when you walk in and you can see a paint job is bad. You can see certain things, certain electrical things are bad, and it just doesn't feel right. You walk through the house, there's dips in the floors. You can tell they didn't take the time to do things right. A lot of times they're looking to do the least amount of work and maximize their profit, which is not the way to do things. And look, I'm even guilty of this early on in my career when I first started flipping. Like, let's just do the cheap way to maximize the profit. But I learned that that is not the right way to do it, and it always come back to haunt you in the end. The best thing you can do when searching for a home is just get a home inspection. A home inspector is going to tell you everything you need to know about the house you think about buying. And I guarantee you, they'll tell you it was probably a flipped house too. Number four is something that is not talked about enough. And I want to let you know, big trees Next to a house is a horrible idea, especially if you live in an area where you have a lot of tornadoes, a lot of high winds, even earthquakes. Big trees next to your home can be very dangerous. I mean, you're talking about things like falling branches, the tree actually falling over. But one thing that a lot of people don't mention is the roots. If you're not careful, the roots of those trees can actually get too close to the foundation and they can actually crack your foundation. And in some rare cases, yes, can even penetrate through the foundation. I've even seen some homes where the roots have actually penetrated through plumbing and pipes and completely backed up a certain part of the house. So if you see a house where a tree is really close and it's really big, just avoid it altogether unless that seller is willing to pay you or pay for themselves to have it removed. Number five is a really self explanatory one, but needs to be said: homes that are in a flood zone. The biggest reason for this is the insurance cost. A home that does not require flood insurance maybe cost you 500-600 bucks a year, which is not terrible. But if you're in a flood zone, you could be looking of upwards of 3 grand every year, and it's gonna be required by your mortgage company. And not to mention, who wants to potentially go through an area where it could flood? I remember living in Baton Rouge when we had that 2016 flood and looking around, you seeing all the devastation, you see, the floodwaters rising above gas stations. It's definitely scary and you don't want to live in that situation. Number six, this may come as a shock to some of you, but new construction homes. Now, I don't mean all new construction, but I mean specifically to a couple of builders. You probably know where I'm going with this, but DR Horton is probably the main culprit right now. Unfortunately, they just have had so many problems, especially here locally in the South, with bad insulation, not hiring the right AC company to put big enough units. They're just having a lot of problems with new homes, and I would avoid them at all costs. But if you're in an area where DR Horton is kind of the only one, then you can still go with them. I would hire your own third party inspector, not the one that they use, to come in and fully inspect the house at every phase. That's framing, roofing, rough in plumbing, rough in electrical, the final, I mean, everything, every step of the way. Have someone come in and inspect it. Yes, it may cost some money up front, but in the end, you'll know and have peace of mind that your house was built right. And look, I know all this can be kind of scary and all this sounds like, man, well, is there going to be a good home for me out there? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Finding a home, buying a home, like trying to get your dream home, it is completely possible. And if you're looking to try to buy a home, then click on this video right here.